interviewing one of the presidential aspirants in Nigeria. As you know, 2023 is a year of decision in this country, because by May 29, against all odds and opposition, Nigeria will be having a new president. Some governors will come back, new governors will be sworn in on that May 29. And I have joining me on this program, special edition, Omoyele Sowore, who is a presidential aspirant under the platform of the African Action Congress, ACC. Sowore, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for bringing me. What people didn't see in 2019, they will see in 2023. Because now all eyes are open. All the things that we said we would do in 2019 that people thought was impossible, the ideas that we brought, that some of them even ridicule, have become dominant ideas now. And as a result, it is clear who the leader should have been since 2019. But now that they know, and they are very understanding of the fact that we are rugged, they've seen what I went through, going to detention for 5 months, coming out and carrying on with all the adversities I faced. I think Nigerian people understand who the real leader should be.
I'm not supposed to be canvassing for Nigeria politics because I am fed up. I told him, but because of him, I will support him in any level that I can.
He's an outstanding candidate who is fighting for the ordinary people and who believes in the struggle of ordinary people.
We hear a lot about you, Omoyele Sowore. I don't want to tell you why we hear about you a lot. We don't need that.
Yes.
But then, can we meet you? Who is Omoyele Sowore?
Omoyele Sowore was born in 1971 in a rural village in Ondo State known as Kiribo. I traveled extensively with my dad, so I didn't really have the original style of schooling that most people have, like you go to primary one, kindergarten. I was homeschooled by my dad, who's a teacher. So we just followed him to his school. When we were back from school, he starts teaching us. That's how I started primary school. And then when we were done, of course, I went to a conventional school. It's a local authority primary school in my village when we were back from his teaching service, where he also taught me. So I left primary school in class 4. I was given double promotion to go to secondary school in 1980 when I was 9 years old. I proceeded from there to another secondary school in Okitipupa, Ofedekwe Comprehensive High School. It's named before I got admission into the University of Lagos in 1989. I was there for 6 years because there were strikes, there were problems with military rule, and I was a major activist. So my delay was likely because I was expelled from the university twice for socio-political activities, because it was during military rule. It was the Babangida era. And my graduation lapse or morphed into the June 12 annulment. Then we led that movement at that time on the student axis. So you can understand why. So 1999, I left Nigeria for the United States and enrolled at a point to study my master's degree at Columbia University in New York City. Graduated in 2003 and went ahead to do some media work. That was how Sahara Reporters emerged from New York, New Jersey axis, where I was living at that time. And as I say, the rest is history, but I also taught for 10 years, almost close to 8 to 10 years at the School of Visual Arts in New York. I was teaching post-colonial Africa history and also taught in another polytechnic in Brooklyn for 1 semester before I returned to Nigeria to do political work again in 2018, 2019. So that's, in a nutshell, my life history.
But why do you want to be president of Nigeria?
Apart from the fact that I'm entitled to aspire to the highest office in the land, mine is driven by the motivation to save this country. And I know that this is one well worn out word used by everybody who accidentally has applied or has try to run for the president. But my own is different. I have been part of the political history of Nigeria for 32 years now. So I've never been away from any political event in Nigeria, starting from the struggle to drive military out of power, the June 12th election processes, the fight against Abacha, environmental struggle in Niger Delta region, the struggle for students' freedom, the political activities involving stopping third term, bringing about smooth transition when the president of Nigeria was sick, to that period where Nigeria had its first party-to-party democratic transition as well, which was 2015. I've been involved in all of this. But most importantly, it is that I clearly know and have seen, and this is not questionable, that I have been driven by a vision to see a better Nigeria since I was 18 years old. But I stayed away from partisan politics, not necessarily political activism, as I've told my story. And I discovered that the more you stay away, the more people who are not worthy, fit, or generally acceptable continue to run your society or your country. And you deprive not just yourself the opportunity to right the wrongs that is afflicting your own country or society, but you also deny others. So having seen the capacity that I have developed over the years, my in-depth knowledge and exposure on how to do things and how to get things right, I decided in 2018 particularly to join partisan politics. Went in there and actually worked with others to create a political party after we started with a political movement known as Take It Back movement. Then we created a political party in 2018 known as the African Action Congress, AAC. So, and since then, things have never been the same with myself and Nigeria.
You are an activist.
Yes.
Are you not attempting to bulldoze your way into presidency? Altercations with too many security agencies? Or are they overdoing things, overzealous?
It's not possible to bulldoze my way into the presidency. I don't have any means to plan a coup or take over government by any forceful means. What I have done is to use the tool of peaceful agitation to fight against what is wrong in our society. And it is natural that those who want to keep the status quo ante will always overdo things, either out of overzealousness or to protect their paymasters who have held the country to ransom for close to 62 years now. So I have no means to bulldoze my way. I've always only believed in democracy as a means of taking over government. And that democracy involves also people accepting and rejecting, whether at the beginning of an election or through the tenure of a government that is not working for them or in their own interest. So because I know you will ask the question very quickly about revolution now. So with regards to the security agencies, from the beginning of time, this is what they were created to do, which is to always oppress the people who ask questions so that they can protect the oppressors. And if you look at the history of Nigeria police, for instance, at the time it was called the Queen's Constabulary, at the time it was called the Northern Nigeria, at the time it was called Northern Nigeria Constabulary. At the point it was the Royal Niger Police. It was the police to a company that helped to create the country known as Nigeria today. The same thing with the army, the DSS, or the CSSS as they call them. These groups have metamorphosed over time, changed nomenclature from time to time, but their purpose remained the same, which is to oppress and suppress any form of agitation that would change the course of history in Nigeria, for the good in particular. So, back to your question again, no plans to bulldoze my way. I have no means of bulldozing my way. I've never carried a penknife in my life. talk less of a gun or any instrument of violence.
This is a special interview session, and I have as my guest Omoyele Sowore, who is contesting for the high seat in the land under the platform of AAC. Once upon a time in Africa, there has been a head of state. When he was mounting that seat, people were saying it was never corrupt. At the end of the day, we discovered that he was surrounded by corrupt politicians, and apart from that, surrounded by sycophants and many sycophants who would not want to tell him the truth. Sure, I want to put it to you now. You know yourself.
Yes.
Have you properly assessed the people that will be with you in governance, so that at the end of the day, you don't end up like that head of state I just spoke about?
You see, I would say this, and this is very important. Character is very, very important in leadership. And those you see in power, like the head of state you described, and they have developed their friends from when they're young and little. They've decided characteristically, I'm talking about character now, to surround themselves with people who only please them, who only say things they want to hear. I have never done that before. I have always maintained a very humble lifestyle. I grew up humble, I grew up poor, and it's not to be using poverty as a basis for justifying the fact that you'll be a better leader. But this is not my first position of leadership. I led students before. And before anybody cries, oh, student unionism is different from governance, let me tell you, students are the most difficult people to govern as a leader. I'm not talking about student union of today. You know about this because you also passed through the university at the time student unionism was legit and genuine. Because they're educated. So it's more difficult to govern 20,000 students who are educated than to govern 10 million people who are not educated. So I was a student union president at the University of Lagos. University of Lagos, not any other university. When I was 23 years old, I was student union president. I mean, I actually started when I was 21 years old, 1992. And there was nothing that was not pushed in my direction. It was in time the military was giving out cars to student union leaders to keep their mouths shut. It was the time politicians were giving out money. I have told a story before of when I went to see Abiola in 1993 in his house, and he had a massive bag of cash beside him. All these politicians were sitting down there, Jakonde, Babatok, all of them. I can't count how many of them were seated in his massive parlor. And I walked in, and when he saw me, he said, student union leader, I've been looking forward to it. It was my first time of meeting him. I was 22 years old. He brought out 800,000 naira. Compare what the value of naira was then. And said, please, for whatever it is, go and use this to buy water. Whatever you want to buy. You are doing so much. And I rejected it. He was shocked. He told me that nobody has ever rejected money that he gave before because it's his money. It's not stolen money. It's not. I said, no. We are not here because of your money. We are here because of our future. When I was leaving, he stood up and accompanied me. Also, Chief Anthony Nahoro also stood up, and we went out, and he was like, we saw then Channels TV owner at that time, John Momo. He was almost the only person at Channels TV in 1993, and he threw out his microphone to interview Abiola. And Abiola said, student leader, come, let's stand together. The video is still alive today. You can see it online. So if I had taken his money, I don't know how he would have looked at me today. I don't know how I would have felt. I don't know how the students that I was governing that sent me there, on whose authority I went to visit, would have felt that we didn't send you to go and collect money. You went. But it wasn't about even all those fears. It was that's always been my way of coincidence. And this extended or has persisted in my life. I'm just giving you these examples that when I was vulnerable, weak, poor, really poor, dead poor, I never participated in corruption. When I started Sahara Reporters, and you know this in the media, it was one of the biggest things to happen to media in this country. And money was thrown at me, come and collect this. Even legitimate ads that could come our way, we rejected it. Say we're not taking government ads. If we do, it would mean that government can ride roughshod on our work. So we rejected all that. So nobody today, 51 years of age, 32 years as an activist, some 15 to 16 years as a publisher of one of the most credible platform in the country, global brand, can accuse me of engaging in any of these shenanigans that is well known to prevail in Nigeria today, or I've ever even met with president of this country. I've never met with the Nigerian president before, never met with a governor, except if by accident, never walked into a government house, you know, on an appointment to see a governor. None. I can count how many governors I met, and they were probably during Chinua Achebe's lecture in the U.S., Colocon, Amechi Ngige, Peter Obi, maybe I've never met any other activist except to just maybe pass by each other, because I don't have, you know, I've met Fayemi before because he was in the pro-democracy movement, but it was after he lost out the second time we met at a conference. So several of these people are people I don't have relationship with, and they can't claim to have relationship with me because I know those kind of relationships, if you're not careful, the boundaries will be breached. So I don't make myself available in places where they do the deals. And that's why it's important. I know this question ought not to have taken this much explanation, but it's needed so that people can recognize that there are people out there who cannot be bought or sold in Nigeria.
How about your associates?
It's the same thing. My associates know me, and I know my associates. I don't choose people who I don't know to associate with. You know, it is such that we make fun of ourselves, that we are comfortable with our poverty. You know, it is not impossible that all the people I've associated with in this life, someone may not have done something wrong, but not that I know of, and not that I participated in. And they know that I ask for criticism specifically. If someone is praising me too much all the time, I get tired of them. I distance myself from them. I ask them, even when we hold meetings, you know, is it not something we've done that could be wrong? Can somebody say it? Don't be afraid. So I encourage them to speak up. And one of our cardinal principles is to say to everybody who is associated with us that you have a fundamental right to express yourself. We don't take no oath. We don't ask somebody not to speak out. Never.
We need a president in Nigeria that will roll our refineries into action. For goodness sake, this is an oil-producing country.
Yes.
Can we count on you?
Well, not only can you count on me to make the 4 refineries that are out of work and out of use to work, but I'll respond by telling you how disgraceful it is for Nigeria or Nigerian leaders to go and commission a refinery built by an individual in Lagos, a petrochemical company, built probably in the last 10 years that I know of. And Nigeria cannot add a single refinery to the existing 4. And the existing 4 doesn't work at all. It is a disgrace. It is self-sabotage carried out by the Nigerian political elite. We also shamelessly invested $2.5 billion in a private refinery built by somebody who is a citizen of this country, who relied on all the fiscal support provided by the government, including dollars that were provided at subsidized rates, provided specially for him, special rates, special time, so that he could get all those equipments to build his own refinery. Nigeria, as a nation, could not build at least 2 or 4 refineries in those times. And we don't have to build refineries as big as his. The technology that is out there today has made it possible for you to build very small refineries, modular refineries as you call them. They can just put them together, build, and you come and assemble at home. In a matter of months, they start working. It depends on the capacity that you want. But we do not have leaders who have the thinking capacity, who are driven by the mission and the vision to to make this thing happen, or these things happen. That's why we don't have refinery. We're not going to have any functioning refinery anytime. You are not going to have, as long as they are there, you are not going to have functioning electrical grids anytime, or functioning electricity plants anytime soon, because they don't have the capacity to make new ones or make the old ones work. It's not possible. They don't have the capacity, they don't have the connection, they don't have the intellectual capacity, they don't have also the confidence of the international financial markets where the investments ought to come to make these things work. They've tried it in the past, discovered that Nigerians have just a bunch of jokers as leaders, and a lot of them have pulled out. Give you an example. There was a time a massive turbine was brought by General Electric in the U.S. And I think it was under Yar'Adua or Jonathan regime. When they got to the port, they discovered that it's a bridge that was needed to carry it to where it ought to work. By the time the bridge was built and finished, that plant had expired, the turbine. And they went back to GE and said, well, we have a contract to do this for only a period of time. That period is over. I don't think that turbine ever worked till today. And then you have plants all over the place that need gas. But they don't have gas because Nigeria is selling its gas to Europe and America, and it's not providing gas to our local plants that need them. Meanwhile, they claim that they have privatized all these plants. Plants that were built with Nigeria's sweat and money was given to individuals at giveaway prices, and now we are complaining why we don't have electricity.
What is wrong with security in Nigeria? I'm able to say it, that it has never been this bad. What is going on, and what do you think you can do if you become Nigeria's president?
Thank you. It is true that it's never been this bad, because even during the Civil War, there were limitations to violence, because it was Civil War. There are rules guiding a country at war. And now Nigeria is in a state of uncivil war.
Civil war.
Yes. No rules at play. Everybody is doing whatever they like. Because if it was civil war, if people are abducted from a train, they ought to be treated as prisoners of war. They are not to be starved, they are not to be paraded or maltreated or mistreated by those who are their captors. So each of the security agencies on their own are just operating as rogue units, you heard me right, of the security. So, for instance, they don't share intelligence because it's not in the interest of the business of security, the money they are making from it, to share intelligence. Then you have wrong security agencies doing the wrong things. The army, for instance, has no business running around within the cities and villages dealing with internal security. It's the job of the police. The Nigerian police has the biggest unit, the largest population of security agents in the country. About 350,000 policemen are in the police force, men and women. The army is about 144,000. The DSS is not up to even 10,000, to the best of my knowledge, about 5,000 of them. Some have said 50,000, but I was there for 4 months. I know their infrastructure.
As a guest?
Yes, as a guest of the DSS, detained there. So I know about them. So you have the Navy is about 15,000, the Air Force is about 12,000. But who is in charge is very important. But having said that, there are several other issues that is wrong with our security system. The security system has been destroyed by ethnicity, religiosity, and those other things that destroyed Nigeria as a whole first has been introduced and injected into the security agencies. The issue of merit is no longer at play in the security agencies. So you have, in some cases, like you have Oba Bakari, who gives instruction to his superiors. So the command and control structure of our security agencies are broken down based on indiscipline, based on ethnicity, tribalism, nepotism, and several other ills that is besetting the country. You now go to what is their understanding of national security. The modern national security architecture that is needed in every country starts with economic security, what is referred to also as, economic security for everybody. In the US, they call it social security, because if you don't deal with how people eat, how they work, and how they support their families, you have only unleashed on your society criminals. There's nothing you can do about it, including security agencies themselves, who are underpaid, undermotivated, and in some cases, underutilized. Then there's issue of national security, which includes power. Even the power lines that somebody just ran into the other day that led to the last collapse of the national grid ought not to have happened. All those places ought to have been secured. You have in Niger Delta region now, they have admitted that theft of oil has reached a level that almost half of Nigeria oil export is stolen, crude is stolen today. That is a breakdown of part of the national security that we are talking about. Then there's homeland security. I'm talking about modern security now, which deals with how we identify people in our country, where they move to, what they do, whether they are citizens or non-citizens, monitoring and ensuring that everybody that's living in your country, we keep an eye on them. That's homeland security. But your homeland has been overrun by different kinds of special interests. People you call headsmen are mostly not non-Nigerians. So the collapse of homeland security is part of the major issue, that the effect of which we are seeing today, that's overwhelming everybody, because everybody who has access to weapons can set up a camp in any forest, in any part of Nigeria, abduct people and make a phone call to their families to come and pay ransom. And when our own police even find out their location, they have no capacity to extract those victims or even invade some of these places, because they've been ruined by the other issues that I've spoken about. Then you break it down to the level of equipment, motivation, remuneration. We are lacking in all those areas. You cannot pay a police officer 56,000 naira per month and then expect and give him a gun and expect him not to extort money from people or even kidnap people or rob people if necessary, because it's a function of survival of the fittest in the country. So if they have a choice or a chance to stop a terrorist, putting their lives on the line, they'll prefer to just preserve their lives and let the terrorists pass and do what they have to do, because it's no longer what is dying for Nigeria. There's nothing to die for here anymore.
I want us to zero in on this last attack on the Great Line. What went wrong? Do you have an idea?
Well, I don't see any difference between a bandit and a terrorist. The moment you're carrying out an act of terrorism, based on a belief system that is driving your murderous ideology, you have to be grouped as the same and be treated the same way. What went wrong is that there is no infrastructure security for our rail lines. The rail lines were just brought in by whomever brought it, I think Amechi, without the necessary accessories to protect the rail lines. And I mentioned that on the national TV last week, that the rail lines of nowadays ought to have sensors. It's to the point that even if a goat passes over the rail line, it should notify the nearest office or signal office, to the point that if it's bombed, which means that somebody actually went there, attached the bomb to the rail lines before he blew it up, the rail sensors ought to have caught up with those people. Rail line systems ought to also have cameras installed along the way. They don't have to be physical all the time. You can also have drones flying over the rail ahead of the rail that is traveling, so that you are making efforts to prevent what that has now become a catastrophe before they happen at all. So it's not enough to say, well, we are flying a helicopter behind a railway. It's the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. Because what is the helicopter going to do if it finds underneath it that some people are trying to derail the railway? It can't do anything. Is it supposed to fire on the rail? Is the helicopter gunship now accompanying rail lines? We do things in this country without sense. I've never heard anywhere in the world that helicopters follow trains. Beside that, it is also the fact that we are behind in technology. And part of it is that these rail lines of nowadays Nigeria have to be faster than they are. So you are still doing 30 miles per hour between Kaduna and, whereas we have rail lines in China where we bought these rusty coaches from that are moving at 300 miles per hour. That means that they are so fast, it is so difficult to even, waylay them. Of course, you still have to move on tracks. I've mentioned that tracks security is different from coach security. But had we adopted the modern railway system that you have in other parts of the world, I'm not saying that accidents cannot happen, don't get me wrong, but there will not be this ridiculous kind of accident in which people just show up. They pretty much just ask the train to stop like a taxi, blew up the rail tracks, and then entered from coach to coach to abduct who they wanted, shoot and kill who they wanted. And another thing, because of lack of security response system, which ought to be part of security, is that it took over an hour before help came to these people in distress, because the train itself did not have the kind of communication that could have communicated either human communication or automatic communication from the train to the nearest command and control support system that would have made it possible for the help to come to that train in less than 5 or 10 minutes. We could have saved most of the people. I heard from one of them, because I spoke to them as the train was breaking. I heard that the terrorists took them, they were driving them in bashes, 50 miles away, came back again in Siena to collect more. It was when they came the third time that soldiers then arrived. And before the soldiers arrived, they had had enough opportunity to lay ambush for the soldiers. So the first set of soldiers that came were also massacred. So this is unquestionably unacceptable way of running a railway system. But we are talking about Nigeria here. Anything is possible. Yes.
Right. So let's look at something. In the area of health, there are problems.
Yes.
Education
Problems, yes.
Entrepreneurship, employment problems. Security problems.
Yes.
Now, haven't you ever sat down to think that, won't I be overwhelmed if at the end of the day I become president of Nigeria with all this lorry load of problems?
Yes. See, the office of the president is not just an individual who has an ambition to become president, like I've heard from some of the people contesting. The office of the president has a lot to do with it. It's sometimes the chief motivator of the country. Is the human resources manager of the country. Who's the human resource manager of the country? Is the person who goes to look for the best hands to work with him to solve these problems. What we have had in Nigeria in the last few years, or even maybe our entire life, is that we've never had the right managers of people, ideas, and policies in place. I'm not talking about the propaganda of going to the World Bank to bring somebody who is secretary there, you call them an economist, and then they ruin your country, but they keep the propaganda in the newspaper that they did their best. No, we're talking about, it doesn't have to even be lousy sometimes. The reason I say so is that having lived 20 years abroad myself in the US and traveling to over 30 countries in the world, and this is not a lot of countries, but I've done some 30 countries. There's nowhere I went in the world where Nigerians are not in very powerful positions, running countries, infrastructure, banks, the healthcare sector, the medical sector, the educational higher institutions. There are countries that are almost completely being managed by Nigerians in the Caribbean. There are tunnel engineers in the UK, 6 hours away, who are responsible for the subway in the UK. Nigerians who help them design how to burrow into the ground, to put trains under them. They are all over the place, and they are willing to come back. It's the same resource or resources that India relied on to change the fortune of India. They called back everybody. It was like it was an emergency for the leadership in India at that time. I said, if you are a system engineer, a cyber security expert, we provide the enabling environment for you to come back home.
Please come home.
That solves the entrepreneurial problem, because you bring it back, make them safe, provide them with electricity, automatically you generate employment. Even for people who are abroad now, anytime they invest a little at home, they employ nothing less than 20, 30 people. For those who are, let me give you an example, even just ordinarily doing fish ponds. They invest in fish ponds to grow tilapia and catfish. They employ 30 people before you know it. So imagine if you have a country where those who have real skills can come and be parts of the private and public sector. I'm talking about Nigerians outside now. And there are Nigerians inside too, who have the knowledge to run this country the way it should be run. But they are never allowed to come near the positions of power. There was a Nigerian who was one of the people that invented the plasma TV, the TV we watch now. This, I think it was in Boston. One Dr. Akinwande. He had agreed to work with the Buhari regime, I don't know in what capacity. But twice, when they were supposed to swear him in, he didn't show up. Reason, I can't bring my wife and family to be kidnapped by your people and get killed. It's not worth it. So there are tons of people like that. There are people who will want to come to Nigeria and even pay Nigeria salary, not to be paid now, just because they are willing to work. I know of doctors who have retired in the system in Europe, but who still got like 10 years to give, who have come back to Nigeria, let's help. No way. Because the system is so rotten that there's no space to do good anymore in Nigeria. So, but turn around, 34 minutes or 50 minutes away in Ghana. Ghana is benefiting not only from their diaspora, their citizens traveled abroad, but from black Americans who are also bringing investment and their skills back to Ghana, because Ghana provided them with one little thing, or maybe a few little things: peace of mind, security, electricity, that they need to do their business. And go to Ghana today, you find villages constructed by black Americans. Things that are supposed to come to Nigeria are diverted to Ghana. Grants, schools, philanthropists, and they are going to Ghana, because even the backbone of Nigerian banks are mostly in Ghana. I'm talking about their cyber backbones because of electricity. Movie producers go to Benin Republic to make movies because of electricity. Each time you go into those communities or those societies, you invest in them. How many Nigerians these days can you ask to come home for holidays that will come? But you know that each time people come visit for holidays, they bring in their pockets dollars. And if they bring in that money, it will double what they send by Western Union. So if your country was working security, power, infrastructure, instead of getting $50 billion from the diaspora, from remittances through Western Union and other money transfer services, they would also bring in another $50 in cash into the country. But who wants to travel to Nigeria? Nobody.
How close are you to Nigerians in the diaspora?
I lived there for 20 years, and I touched everywhere that can legitimately be referred to as the Nigerian diaspora. I traveled extensively in Europe, in the United Kingdom. At the point I was in Scotland, I went to South Africa, Kenya. I spent time in Australia. Australia is almost 3 days by air travel. And every city I went, Perth, Sydney, and the two other cities that I traveled to had massive Nigerian populations. And these are not they are not riffraffs, these are successful Nigerians, doctors, university lecturers, or professors as you call them. In the US, of course, we are present in all the 50 states. I traveled to Brazil. I found Yoruba Orisha worshippers there. They're doing well. I traveled to a lot of Caribbean countries. I've been in Jamaica, and I think I've been to. I've not been to Haiti, but I went to the Dominican Republic. I even went to Mexico. Mexico, of all places, and there are Nigerians there in Los Cabos. Before I traveled back to Nigeria and got arrested, Mexico was my last trip. So in all these places, you find amazing people, Nigerians, and everybody's complaining about the same thing: leadership, leadership, leadership. And I guarantee you, everybody wants to come home if home was an acceptable place to live for them. But they don't have a livable and lovable home.
What is your assessment of this much touted emancipation of women? Is it relevant?
It is.
Okay.
It's not much touted. I think women are a gender that is so oppressed and suppressed, and with all kinds of systems. Our religious system suppresses women. Our governmental system oppresses women. Our cultural system is dangerous to even their existence. So every facet of life is difficult for women in our society, especially on this side of the world, the African continent. So, but you look at it, people who are running your households are women. People who, when you are tired, motivate you are women. They are the hardest working people or gender in the world, because they have to combine the domestic work of being wives, mothers, lovers, supporters, with the work of helping you to run a society. Because so many of them have to work apart from taking their children to school, catering for them when they are sick, including catering for their husbands. And then we look at them and say to them, they are the weaker sex. There's nothing weak about women. It is men who control the world that have weakened women by ensuring that when politics started, we said they shouldn't be voting because they are not equal to us. People even went and found a place in the Bible that says that they were taken from the rib of men. I've not seen the scar on our body to show that part of our rib was removed to make another person. It's all a lie. But we have done everything stylishly, directly, to just ruin whatever is the little liberty that they should enjoy. And I'm opposed, for instance, to any country that has a Ministry of Women Affairs. And I'm going to not have a Ministry of Women Affairs as the President of Nigeria until anybody can show me the Ministry of Men Affairs. It's part of how we discriminate against women, by creating one ministry. So are you saying the rest of all the ministries belong to men? That's so. And in every part of our lives in this modern world, we've seen how powerful the ideas of women have helped to shape the world. And I'm not just saying it because I want to sound politically correct. It is the truth. And the earlier we live with that reality, the better. But most importantly, the earlier women also understand their power and use it, the better. I have been saying it that if women decide today that they want to vote for a women candidate to be president of Nigeria, we can't defeat them. Because you look at politics, they are most likely the ones who participate in politics over a 4 years period. They are the ones who are going to wear the clothes that you design. You know. They are the ones who will wait at the airport to welcome candidates, men. They are the ones who will be left at the venue of your rally, still singing and clapping, and cleaning up after all of you have been gone. They are the ones. So I don't know what they are waiting for. So the other day they said 35%, a judge made a ruling that 35% of all federal positions should belong to women. And people are celebrating it. I said, well, what are you celebrating 35%? Why don't you go for 100%? And then we'll be dragging it with you. It's men that should be negotiating with women now for political percentages. Because by the standard of global population, there are more women in the world now than there are men. In fact, they said there are over 7 women to a man now. So, and men can't even cope anymore with the number of women that are available. So the earlier they get it right and they start exercising their political power, the better for them. Well, Nigerians, as you can see, things don't have to be like this. And you don't have to live the way you are living now. You don't have to suffer and live in a country where you were born, raised, and bred in misery, the way you have been living. You don't have to be a second-class citizen in your own country. You don't have to beg for food. You don't have to beg for medicine. You don't have to beg so that your schools remain open because they get frequently closed. You don't have to die on a highway. Otherwise, I mean, you should be able to make it to your destination. You don't have to be sick all the time. You don't have to be depressed. You don't have to go through so much of what you are going through now. If only you can make the right political decision. And I know they're very difficult because you are told all the time that the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know. But you also don't have to know the devil to live peacefully, securely, and happily in your homeland, the country of your birth. And that's why I'm appealing to you once again not to be afraid to take the best decision available to you. Vote for the right person in the next election in 2023, in case elections hold in 2023. Don't be afraid to make that leap. And I'm talking to you as one of you. I've been through everything you've been through. I've been through worse things than some of you are going through. Having been shot, having been detained illegally, having had a close relative of mine killed without explanation, my younger brother, my immediate younger brother, in the last 3 years. And I know you're going through hell as well. But we're going through this all together. And together, we can also bail ourselves out of this political class in Nigeria.